You know what I like to do in my spare time? I like to lapse time. I like to lapse time. I like to make time lapses. What's up YouTube? It's your boy, BMAC, and one of the questions I get asked all the time on this channel has to do with my time lapses, especially the time lapses that I include in my cinematic vlogs on this channel, which of course you can check out by clicking the card annotation that's going to pop up on the top right hand corner of your screen, or as always there will be a link in the video description box below that will bring you to that cinematic vlog video playlist, so check that out if you want to see my vlogs. But in short, there are two different ways that I personally film my time lapses. There's the simple, easy way, and then there's the more complex, professional way. Both methods are great in their own way. Both methods can create breathtaking time-lapse results that allow us to see our world through film in a new way, through a new perspective. But today, by popular demand, I thought I would share with you guys my simple technique for filming amazing time-lapses. So hopefully by the end of this video, you'll know exactly what you gotta do to start time-lapsing like a boss. Become a time-lapse boss. First things first, to create a time lapse, you're actually going to need two different things. Two things that I probably should have gotten before I started this video. Okay. Got them. The very first thing you're gonna need, kind of obvious, you're gonna need a camera. You're gonna need a camera that shoots video, and ideally a camera that you actually have some manual control over when it comes to the video settings. And you probably also need a tripod. Now I use a couple different tripods depending on what I'm doing, what the setup is. This right here, this is a ADOBE Gorilla Pod. Basically, it's a bendy tripod that allows you to wrap it around things. If I don't have the Gorilla Pod, I'm using this Manfrotto. This thing is actually sick. I really love this. These three little legs just fold out like that. It's an instant tripod. It's very stable. You get this nice little button on the top that allows you to actually move the ball head on the top of the tripod. Easy for framing your shot. And I like this Manfrotto mini tripod because look at the size difference. I mean, it's half, maybe a quarter the size of the Gorilla Pod. You just screw it into the bottom of your camera. So I really do love this thing. Or if I know I'm gonna be filming a time lapse that's a little bit higher off the ground with a little bit more height, I'm using this bad boy right here. This is currently my go-to tripod. It is a Ranger's portable tripod. It's super light, it's mad durable, and it collapses down to a pretty small form factor right here. You just undo the legs right here, the thing's gonna pop out, boom. Instant tripod, super easy to travel with, easy to lug around. I'll be sure to leave product links to all three of these tripods in the video description box below, so check that out if you wanna cop one of these bad boys for yourself. Point is, you just want your camera to be completely still throughout your time-lapse filming. And when you're location scouting, when you're figuring out where to actually shoot your time-lapse, you want to keep one thing in mind: movement. A time-lapse really isn't going to look that impressive unless there's some kind of movement in the actual time-lapse. Otherwise, you're just going to have a still, static shot and there's nothing actually being lapsed. Well, besides time. Time is being lapsed, but like, you won't even be able to tell time is being lapsed because it's just a static image. Really, you're gonna wanna look for anything with slow to medium pace movement that you think would look cool if you sped it up. So typically, the slower the movement and the longer you film, the more impressive the final time lapse can be. Just keep that in mind when you're looking for movement to actually capture in your time lapse. So now that you have all the basics, the next thing you're gonna wanna do is set up your tripod and put your camera on top of it. Basically, what you're gonna do for my simple time lapse technique is just take a very long video and speed it up. That, in essence, is what a time lapse is. I'm gonna show you how to do that in a couple seconds. But the secret to what actually makes the simple time lapse technique impressive are the settings you're gonna use on your camera when actually filming the time lapse. Firstly, I would highly recommend that you set your focus to manual. Frame your shot, compose it properly, set your focus accordingly, and lock it there. Do not use autofocus. If your time lapse has a lot of movement in the frame, say for instance we have clouds going by, but we have a breeze in the foreground that's moving leaves, a lot of times your camera's autofocus could get confused if it doesn't know what to actually focus on because of all that movement going on in the shot. In real time, that switch in focus might not look like a big deal, but when you play it back afterwards, once you've actually lapsed the time lapse, you're gonna have this weird focus strobing kind of breathing effect that's not gonna look good at all. It's gonna spoil the effect of the time lapse. So set your focus to manual, and I would highly suggest you also turn off any auto exposure settings on your camera. The reason for this is if you're filming something like cloud formations and doing a time lapse of clouds, it could be sunny and cloudy all in the same time lapse where you're filming, which will signal to the camera to adjust its settings to adjust for that exposure change, which again, in real time might not look bad, but when you play it back in time-lapse speed, again, it's gonna have a strobing kind of flashing effect that you don't want. So what I usually do, I lock the shutter at twice my frame rate, whatever my frame rate is, Double that, that's my shutter speed. And then I adjust my aperture and lock it there according to the scene. Basically, all this is going to allow for your time-lapse to look buttery smooth. You won't have any strobing or focus effects that you don't want. And this simple time-lapse you're filming is going to look a lot more professional. When it comes to actually how long to film the time-lapse for, it is going to depend on what you're actually filming. For something like clouds, depending on how fast the clouds are actually moving, you could be filming anywhere from 5 to 30 minutes. If it's a very breezy day and the clouds are moving fast, you could probably get away with a 5-minute time-lapse. Or if there's no wind at all and the clouds are kind of just like hanging there, slowly but surely moving, you might have to film for like 20-30 minutes. As you create more time lapses, you'll get better at understanding how long you have to actually film the time lapse for. The slower the movement, the longer you will have to film for. Just keep that in mind, try it out for yourself, you should be good. So once you've done all that, once you've actually filmed your time lapse, you're gonna wanna import your time lapse footage into your favorite video editor. I personally use Adobe Premiere Pro for all my video editing on this channel. You can actually try out Adobe Premiere Pro for free as part of Adobe's Premiere Pro free trial. If you're interested in Adobe's Premiere Pro free trial, you can check out the link. I'll leave that in the video description box below. But once you have your footage actually imported into your favorite video editor, what I'm about to show you, what I'm about to teach you, the steps to actually create your time lapse can be applied no matter what video editor you're using. So let's hop into Premiere Pro and lapse some time. Alright, so here we are in Adobe Premiere Pro, and we have our time-lapse clip down here on the timeline. As you can see, it's roughly an 8.5-minute clip, and it's a pretty simple time-lapse too. This was actually taken on a rooftop bar in New York City on a beautiful Sunday afternoon. The result is this 8.5-minute clip that we need to change into a time-lapse. And to do that, it's actually pretty simple. You're just going to right-click on your clip, and then scroll down to Speed Duration. That will bring up the Clip Speed Duration box, and this is where we're going to make all our changes for our actual time-lapse. For me personally, I like to keep my time lapses between 5 and 10 seconds. That's what I think the sweet spot is for keeping the viewer's attention and keeping the viewer interested in the time lapse itself. So to create your 5 to 10 second time lapse, you can actually do it one of two ways. You can set your final duration or just manually adjust the speed. You'll notice no matter which setting you start to change, if you drag it left or right, the other setting will change accordingly, so long as you have this link button selected over here. That'll make sure that the two settings here, speed and duration, are working with one another to match up. So let's set the duration to around 5 seconds. And I'm not gonna click OK, I'm just gonna click off, and you'll see it update accordingly the speed. And this is something I wanted to point out. There is a limitation on the max speed you could set on an actual clip. In this case, within Premiere Pro, it's 10,000%, which just happens to be right around a 5-second time lapse. But say you wanted to make this even quicker. Say you wanted this to be a 2 or 3 second time lapse, or let's say you had a 20-minute time lapse that you wanna shrink down and you can't get anywhere close to 5 seconds. If the time lapse isn't short enough and you're already maxing out the speed setting up here at 10,000%, there is a way around that. I'll show you how to do that now. For now, we're just gonna accept these settings, get that time lapse around 5 seconds, click OK, and you'll notice if we scroll through here and zoom in on our timeline, this is now a 5-second time lapse. Looks pretty cool, I'm liking it, but if for whatever reason you wanted to make this time lapse even quicker, since we already maxed out that 10,000% speed change down here, the way around it is to do this. You're gonna once again right click on your clip, and then you're gonna scroll down to Nest. You can give it a name if you want. What this does is essentially save all the edits you just made on the previous clip as a new untouched clip with all those edits non-destructively burnt in. So basically this is now a standalone clip that if you go to speed and duration again is now set to 100%. So here you could start to increase the speed once again, and there you'll notice the duration starting to go down. That is how you get around the limitations of speed within Premiere Pro. If you have a very long time lapse and you really want to shrink it down to just 5 to 10 seconds, you could usually do that without being limited by the 10,000% speed limitation by nesting the clip and then putting more speed and duration changes on top of that nested clip. That might be a little confusing, trust me, it makes sense, but that's how you could really speed up a time lapse. For the sake of this time lapse, I don't want it to be that quick. We're gonna go back to what it was before, 5-second time lapse, but we're not done yet. We have this nice cloud movement on the top of the frame, but as we watch this time lapse, you can see there's a little bit of shakiness in the time lapse itself. So even though I use a tripod, we do have a little bit of shaky footage, and this is actually due to people walking by the tripod when it was set up. Believe it or not, the floor was moving ever so slightly, and when you're using a long lens like I was here, those little adjustments with people walking by, that shift in weight, could cause the tripod to shift ever so slightly. So when we speed up the time lapse, that results in shakiness. Not to worry, there is a way to fix this. We're gonna do that now. We could further stabilize this footage, even after using a tripod, by using an effect within Premiere Pro called Warp Stabilizer. It'll pop up right over here once you start typing it in. And what you're gonna wanna do is drag and drop this effect onto your clip, but as you'll see when I do this, you cannot use Warp warp stabilizer and speed on the same clip. So we're gonna take off the warp stabilizer effect on this clip that we already have a speed and duration effect on, and we're gonna do just like we said before, we're gonna nest the clip. Now we have a fresh new clip without any effects on it, it's nested, and now you'll see we're able to drag and drop the warp stabilizer onto this clip. It'll start analyzing the background, analyze the frames, see what it has to do to stabilize this baby, make it super smooth, hashtag no shakiness, and depending on your processor and the resolution, a couple different things, this could take a little bit of time, so we'll just let it do its thing. All right, and we're all set. The warp stabilizer is all done, and now with this green bar, we could actually watch the time lapse. And look at that, no more shakiness. It's actually amazing what the warp stabilizer can do. As long as your clip isn't super shaky, like you weren't hand holding a camera during a time lapse, and you were actually using a tripod, in a situation like this time lapse where we had ever so slight shakes going on, just a little bit of shakiness, the warp stabilizer can work wonders. And already this is making a huge difference in our time lapse. So this is looking pretty good, but there is still one other step I take to really make our time lapses stand out, to give it that last little bit of oomph. You know what I mean? Wow, that was not enthusiastic whatsoever. The last little bit of oomph. You know what I mean? All right, let's get to it. The last thing I'll do is actually start adding keyframes to the position and scale. This will add a little bit of fake camera movement to the time lapse itself, and it will allow for a pretty cool effect. So I usually go to the front of the clip for the time lapse, drop a keyframe there for the position and scale, go to the end of the time lapse, or just about the end, then add another keyframe, and then adjust the scale and the position accordingly. Then I'll drag these keyframes to make sure they're at the very beginning and the very end. So now, look at that nice little bit of fake camera movement we just added. It gives that last little bit of spice to the time lapse. I'm loving that. That is a sick time lapse right there. Look at the clouds. Damn, I'm liking it. From here, all that's left to do is a little bit of color grading. Usually I'll look at the scopes, head over here, drag and drop one of my custom LUTs onto the time lapse itself. This is my BMAC'S summer LUT right here, and make some changes accordingly. And boom, there we have it. This puppy's finished. From here, you can now export this time-lapse into your project, or as a standalone time-lapse, whatever you want to do, and give yourself a pat on the back for a pretty dope time-lapse.
And that's pretty much it. Those are my secrets to my simple time-lapse technique that actually creates some amazing time-lapses. I personally use this simple technique whenever I don't have the time to actually plan out a time-lapse. If there's a spur-of-the-moment opportunity, or if I'm just kind of in a run-and-gun setup, this is the technique I'm using to film my time-lapses. My advanced time-lapse technique actually starts to incorporate more elements into the actual time-lapse itself. We're talking about movement, more control over shutter speed, more control over quality and color. Once you've mastered this simple time-lapse technique and you want to move on to the advanced time-lapse technique, you can check out my tutorial for my advanced time-lapse technique by checking out the card annotation that's going to pop up top right-hand corner of your screen. Or as always, there will be a link to my advanced time-lapse technique tutorial in the video description box below, so be sure to check that out. But if you have any tips of your own, tips that you use when filming a time-lapse with this technique, do us a favor and comment down below your thoughts and ideas. I would love to see what you guys are doing to take this simple time-lapse technique to another level with the tips and the tricks that you're using. So comment down below, and as always, I'll be replying and hearting some of my favorites. I hope you guys found this simple time-lapse tutorial technique helpful for amazing time-lapses. Whew! Say that one 10 times fast. If you did, please don't forget to smash that thumbs up button, and don't forget to subscribe for more filmmaking and photography tutorials on this channel each and every week. I'm gonna go lapse more time. I'm trying to become the ill time-lapser, like the ill time-lapser. I'll see you guys in my next video. The ill time-lapser.